world's most basic rebirth. Our story kicks off with Hiraku, a 39-year-old man whose life was such a tragic dumpster fire that his only real hobby was waiting for the sweet embrace of death. Honestly, his luck was so bad you'd think he accidentally stepped on 1,000 black cats while walking under a forest of ladders. Finally, the universe grants his wish. His heart monitor flatlines, and he checks out of the hospital and into the afterlife. Hiraku wakes up in a void and immediately assumes it's heaven, which is a bit optimistic for a guy who spent his whole life losing, but then a god appears. This god feels genuinely bad. Apparently, watching Hiraku's first life was like watching a slow-motion car crash for 4 decades, and the Almighty actually apologizes for the divine oopsie. To make amends, God offers him a reboot, a brand new, healthy body that won't give out on him. Now, given a blank check from the creator of the universe, most people would ask for literal immortality, world-bending magic, or maybe just a billionaire's bank account. But Hiraku? He looks God in the eye and asks to be a farmer. God is visibly confused. Out of all the infinite possibilities, this man wants to play Stardew Valley in real life? Hiraku explains that he saw a show about farming once while stuck in a hospital bed and thought it looked cool. God, probably realizing that Hiraku is just naturally simple-minded, sighs and grants the wish. As a pity bonus, he tosses in the almighty farming tool, a legendary shape-shifting weapon of mass cultivation. Hiraku spawns in a dense forest, feeling great because his lungs actually work now. He looks in a reflection and realizes he's younger, which is great, but he's also apparently been hit with the ugly stick during the transition. To top it off, God sent him down in an outfit that looks like it came from a divine dollar store clearance rack. Hiraku just shrugs it off. Typical, I'm just happy to be here energy. He summons the tool, which takes the form of a hoe, and realizes he can till the earth for hours without breaking a sweat. It's a cheat code for manual labor. However, reality hits him. He's in the middle of a monster-infested forest with no roof over his head. He finds a massive tree to call home but realizes he has 0 water. He shifts the tool into a shovel and starts digging a hole like a man possessed. Thankfully, the almighty part of the tool means he hits a fresh spring almost immediately. With water secured, he decides to build a hut. This is where we see Hiraku's complete lack of planning. He starts overthinking design and stability until the sun goes down, leaving him in total darkness. He tries to summon a flashlight or a lamp, but the god apparently decided that farming doesn't include modern electricity. He manages to summon a magnifying glass, which is famously useless at night, so he ends up spending his first night cramped inside a hole in a tree like an oversized squirrel. The next day, he starts clearing the land, only to be ambushed by a rabbit monster that clearly didn't get the memo about this being a peaceful slice-of-life anime. Hiraku kills it with 1 hit from his hoe, brutal, and decides it's lunch. After a quick meal, he builds a toilet, priorities I guess, and starts tilling the soil. Even though he has no seeds, plants start sprouting immediately because his tool is basically a magical cheat for biology. While he's busy playing architect and failing to lift logs for his roof, 2 massive horned dogs show up. Most people would run. Hiraku, having the survival instincts of a ham sandwich, decides they look friendly but hungry. He feeds them, notices one is pregnant, and brings them into his house. He has no idea how to deliver puppies, so he just leaves them in his house for privacy and goes back to his tree hole. The next morning, he's a proud grandfather to a litter of puppies. The dogs, now named Kiro and Yuki, decide they live here now. Meanwhile, up in the clouds, God realizes he messed up again. He accidentally dropped Hiraku into the Forest of Death, a place so dangerous that even high-level adventurers end up as monster snacks. God figures Hiraku is already dead, but nope, our boy is just vibing, growing tomatoes that sprout in record time, and building a shrine to the god who keep accidentally trying to kill him. Hiraku discovers a river nearby and builds a wheelbarrow to move stuff around. But as winter approaches, he realizes he's woefully underprepared. He tries to use monster pelts for warmth, but they smell like a dumpster in mid-July. Just when he's about to freeze, he meets a giant spider. Instead of burning the forest down, Hiraku invites the spider into the squad, names him Zane, and gets a custom-made silk jacket out of the deal. Winter passes without Hiraku dying somehow, but spring brings a new problem: loneliness. He spent so much time talking to dogs and spiders that he's worried he'll forget how to speak to humans. Luckily, the forest provides. Zane sounds the alarm, and Hiraku finds a little girl in the woods. When he approaches, she goes full Twilight and bites his neck. Now, normally, getting your blood drained is a red flag. But Hiraku, he blushes. The girl transforms into a tall, beautiful woman named Lou, a vampire. After a brief misunderstanding where the dogs try to eat her, they bond over tomatoes. Hiraku, realizing he hasn't seen a woman in months, pulls the ultimate desperate man move and proposes marriage immediately. Lou, having nowhere else to go and apparently being a fan of fresh produce, actually says yes. The morning after their rough night, his words, not mine, another girl appears tied to a tree. This is Tia, an angel who looks more like she's ready for a battlefield than a church. It turns out Tia was hunting Lou because the vampire has a habit of blowing things up when she's annoyed. After some awkward introductions where Lou brags about her new husband, Tia decides that farming life looks a lot safer than bounty hunting and joins the harem. The farm. Tia eventually leaves on a business trip and returns with a group of high elves. Led by a girl named Lee, these elves are refugees whose village was destroyed. They're looking for a place to repopulate, and Hiraku, being the generous and lonely guy he is, welcomes them all. Of course, the elves immediately faint when they see Zane the giant spider, but they eventually settle in. Hiraku finds out that these aren't your typical tree-hugging elves. They eat meat, use fire magic, and are surprisingly good at construction. Within 10 days, they've built a massive mansion. Hiraku even builds a water reservoir and a rice paddy, because apparently you can't have an isekai without someone introducing white rice to the locals. He ends the day by building a communal bath, because why not? He hops in to demonstrate how to use it, and in true main character fashion, all the girls jump in with him. Hiraku's former miserable life is officially a distant memory. Kiro the dog watches all this and realizes Hiraku is basically building a harem kingdom, reflecting on how they all thought he was a weak human before seeing him one-shot monsters with a garden tool. The mansion is finished, and Hiraku finds a room with a double-bolt lock and 2 beds pushed together. He slowly closes the door, pretending he doesn't know exactly what the elves have planned for him. Since we've settled into the mansion and Hiraku has officially realized he's the only man in a village full of motivated supernatural women, let's see how he handles the workload. The mayor of Harem Village. The tour of the mansion continues, and Lee is basically acting like a real estate agent for a house Hiraku literally built with his own hands. She tells him that if he doesn't like the layout, he should just say the word. Clearly, the elves are eager to please. Hiraku, however, is more concerned with the sheer scale of the operation. He went from living in a literal hole in a tree to being the landlord of a high-end elven dormitory. As the village settles into a rhythm, the hierarchy becomes clear. Hiraku is the village chief, though his daily routine still involves a lot of manual labor. He decides to expand the fields again because apparently the arrival of a dozen elves means he needs enough crops to feed a small army. He sets up specialized areas for different vegetables, and thanks to the almighty farming tool, he doesn't even need to carry seeds. He just thinks about a cabbage, and boom, cabbage everywhere. It's the ultimate lazy man's gardening. But it's not just about the food. Now that he has a community, he realizes he needs to think about logistics. He starts paving the bumpy forest roads because his wheelbarrow is taking a beating. While he's playing construction worker, the elves are busy perfecting their own crafts. It turns out these girls aren't just good at harvesting, they're masters of woodworking and tailoring. Between Zane the spider providing high-quality silk and the elves' skills, Hiraku is finally dressed in something that doesn't look like it came from a dumpster. However, the peaceful life gets interrupted when a representative from the demon kingdom shows up. Most people would be terrified of an emissary from the literal demon lord, but by this point, Hiraku's sense of danger is completely broken. The emissary, a guy named Beazle, arrives expecting to find a terrifying warlord, only to see a guy in a straw hat holding a hoe. Beazle quickly realizes that the dogs guarding the perimeter are actually inferno wolves, monsters that could wipe out an entire platoon. He decides then and there that instead of conquering this place, he should probably just ask for some of those delicious-looking tomatoes. This opens up a whole new can of worms: trade. Hiraku realizes he can't just hoard all this magical produce. He starts making deals with the Demon Kingdom, exchanging surplus crops for things he actually needs, like spices, salt, and metals. He's essentially becoming an economic superpower because he's the only person in the world with infinite growth cheats. Back at the farm, the social dynamics are getting spicy. Lu and Tia are basically competing for Hiraku's attention 24/7. One day, Lu announces she's going to start researching potions again, which Hiraku interprets as, "I'm going to blow things up in the backyard." To keep her occupied, he helps her set up a proper lab, but he keeps a very close eye on her. He also notices that the elves are getting a bit too comfortable. They've started a tradition of having nightly meetings in Hiraku's room to discuss village matters, which is just code for trying to figure out who gets to marry him next. In the middle of all this domestic chaos, a group of lizardmen arrives. They're led by a guy named Daga, and they're looking for work and a place to stay. Hiraku looks at his overflowing rice paddies and the massive reservoir and thinks, "Yeah, I could use some muscle." The lizardmen are hired on the spot to handle the heavy lifting and the aquatic farming. They're incredibly hardworking, though they have a weird habit of being overly formal about everything. With the lizardmen on board, the village, now officially named Taiyo Village, is booming. Hiraku decides it's time to build a proper pub and a brewery. If he's going to be stuck in a forest with vampires, angels, and elves, he's going to need a drink. He experiments with fermenting his crops and eventually perfects a brand of wine and ale that would make a dwarf weep with joy. Naturally, the scent of good booze and high-quality food attracts more trouble. This time, it's a dragon. Not just any dragon, but Drime, one of the most powerful beings in existence. He lands in the village, causing a massive windstorm that almost levels the laundry lines. Hiraku, instead of bowing in terror, walks up to the giant, fire-breathing lizard and basically asks him to watch where he's stepping because he's ruining the crops. Drime is so taken aback by Hiraku's lack of fear, and the fact that he's surrounded by inferno wolves and high-ranking demons, that he shifts into human form just to see what the deal is. After one taste of Hiraku's cooking and a glass of his home-brewed ale, the dragon decides that this village is his new favorite hangout spot. He even offers to protect the place, which is total overkill considering a spider and some dogs already have it handled. The Forest of Death is starting to look more like a 5-star resort, but Hiraku can't help but feel that things are getting a little too big. He just wanted to be a simple farmer, but now he's managing a multi-species coalition, negotiating with dragons and trying to survive the advances of an ever-growing harem.